The cold darkness of space harbored many secrets, and among these was the derelict spaceship Endeavor, adrift and forgotten. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where star systems were plagued by marauding alien fleets, humanity had once fought bravely but had fallen into despair. As the alien terror spread unchecked, Earth's last hope lay frozen in time. Men and women in cryogenic sleep aboard scattered ships like the Endeavor, awaiting a time to awaken and reclaim their legacy. The ship's internal alarms blared suddenly, cutting through the silence like a siren's call. Lights flickered on, illuminating the rows of cryopods lined neatly in the cavernous sleep chamber. With a hiss and a cloud of icy vapor, the first pod opened, revealing Captain Elena Marquez, her eyes blinking against the harsh artificial light. Elena's mind was foggy, the remnants of cryo-sleep lingering like cobwebs. She staggered out of her pod, clutching the sides as her legs acclimatized to bearing weight again. The cold metal floor sent shivers up her spine as she surveyed her surroundings, the memories of the war flooding back. The Endeavor was part of a contingency plan, a desperate measure by a besieged humanity to survive and one day fight back. She approached the central console, her fingers moving deftly over the dusty controls. The screen flickered to life, displaying star charts and a blinking message that confirmed her worst fears. Earth had fallen. The date on the screen showed that over a century had passed since they first entered cryo-sleep. The galaxy now belonged to their enemies, a coalition of alien species known as the Cathrak Alliance, who had terrorized star systems with ruthless efficiency. Elena activated the ship's communication system, attempting to contact any remaining human outposts. Static filled the airwaves for what seemed like an eternity until a crackling voice responded, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. "This is Colonel Jack Rivers of the Human Resistance Base on Titan. Who is this?" "Elena Marquez, captain of the Endeavor. We've just awakened from cryo-sleep. What's the situation out there?" Jack's voice was weary but determined. "It's grim, Elena. The Cathrak have taken almost everything, but there are pockets of resistance. We've been waiting for one of the sleeper ships to wake. You're the first." Determination set in Elena's eyes as she processed the information. The Endeavor was not just a relic of the past. It was a symbol of hope. She knew what had to be done. The ship was equipped with some of the most advanced weaponry of its time. Weapons that had never seen combat because the war had reached Earth's doorstep too quickly. "We'll set course for Titan immediately," Elena declared, her voice steady. "Prepare for our arrival and brief us on the current strategic situation." As she ended the communication, she turned to wake the rest of her crew. They were warriors of a bygone era, frozen in time, now reawakened for a purpose. Each pod opened to reveal soldiers, engineers, and strategists, each grappling with the reality of their new world. The Endeavor thrummed with activity as systems came online and the ship prepared for the journey ahead. Elena stood before her crew, their faces a mixture of confusion and resolve. "We lost Earth, but not the war. We are humanity's last stand," she proclaimed. "We adapt, we fight, and we win. For Earth, for humanity, and for the future we believe in." Her words echoed through the ship, stirring a fierce resolve in the hearts of her crew. Together they would embark on a perilous journey across the stars to join forces with the Resistance and strike back against the Cathrak Alliance. As the Endeavor set its course toward Titan, a distant moon that now symbolized the flickering light of human resistance, the galaxy watched and waited. The cryo-sleepers had awoken, and with them, the hope of humanity's resurgence. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin anew. As the Endeavor sliced through the vacuum of space toward Titan, Captain Elena Marquez spent no time idle. Her crew, freshly awakened and fueled by a shared urgency, hustled through the corridors, checking systems and arming the ship with the remnants of Earth's advanced technology. Meanwhile, Elena studied the tactical data sent from the Resistance base, her mind racing to formulate a plan. The bridge of the Endeavor was a flurry of activity. Lieutenant Hara, the ship's navigation officer, plotted the fastest course to Titan while avoiding known Cathrak patrol routes. "We'll be entering the outer sectors of Saturn's gravitational field in less than 12 hours, Hara reported, her voice steady despite the stakes. Elena nodded, her focus then shifting to communications. Keep trying to establish a secure link with Titan's base. I want updates every hour. We need to know what we're flying into. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Chief Engineer Samuels and his team labored over the ship's old but reliable fusion reactors. These beauties haven't run at full capacity for over a century, Samuels muttered as he calibrated the energy outputs, but they'll get us there. In the armory, Sergeant Major Liu oversaw the distribution of weapons. The racks were filled with pulse rifles, plasma grenades, and prototype combat suits designed for operations in hostile environments. The gear was from a different era, but its deadly efficiency remained unquestioned. As the Endeavor neared Titan, the communications officer finally broke through the interference. "Captain, we have a secure channel to Colonel Rivers," he announced. Elena moved swiftly to the console. "Colonel, this is Marquez. We're approaching Titan. What's the sit rep?" Colonel Rivers' voice crackled through. "Elena, glad to hear you're close. We're under constant surveillance by Cathrak drones. Our anti-detection fields are holding, but it's a temporary solution. We need your firepower and strategic mind on the ground." "Understood, Colonel. We're ready to assist." "How secure is your location for our landing?" Elena asked, her mind picturing the icy landscape of Titan and its hidden dangers. "It's fortified, but visibility is low due to ice storms. You'll need to navigate carefully. We're transmitting the coordinates of our main hangar. It's shielded and should be safe for your entry." "Coordinates received," Elena confirmed, her gaze locked on the forward screen as Titan loomed larger. The moon, enveloped in a swirling mass of orange and white clouds, presented a formidable challenge. As the Endeavor entered Titan's atmosphere, the ship shuddered violently, buffeted by fierce winds and icy particles. Elena stood firm, her eyes scanning the readings. "Steady," she commanded, her voice a calming force amid the turbulence. The descent was treacherous, the visibility near zero. Hera's hands flew over the controls, her expertise tested as she maneuvered the large ship through the storm. Finally, the shadowy outline of the Resistance base emerged through the maelstrom, a beacon of hope on this desolate moon. The Endeavor touched down with a jolt, the hangar doors closing swiftly behind them to shield against the storm. Elena was the first to disembark, her boots thudding on the metallic floor of the hangar. Colonel Rivers was there to meet her, his face weathered but relieved. "Welcome to Titan, Captain. Let's get you up to speed. We've got a lot of work to do." Together they walked towards the command center, past rows of Resistance fighters who looked up with renewed vigor at the sight of the Endeavor crew. Elena's arrival was not just a reinforcement, it was a symbol that the fight was far from over, that the human spirit endured even in the darkest of times. In the command center, maps of Cathrak positions were displayed alongside plans for counterattacks. Elena stepped up, ready to bring her strategic prowess to bear against the alien menace, her mind alight with tactics and the unyielding desire to lead humanity back from the brink. The war for the galaxy had taken a new turn, and Elena was at the heart of it, her resolve as unbreakable as the ice that cloaked Titan. Titan's icy surface was more than a battleground. It was a testament to human resilience. Underneath layers of ice and rock, the Resistance had carved out not just a base, but a sanctuary. Within this labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, strategies were devised and alliances fortified. Elena, now fully integrated, took the lead in planning the next series of maneuvers against the Cathrak forces. The Resistance's command center buzzed with activity, maps and holographic displays showing troop movements and enemy locations. Elena stood at the forefront, pointing to a sector on the map. "The Cathrak supply routes run through here," she explained, her finger tracing the routes that snaked across a digital representation of the Saturnian moons. "If we sever their supply lines, we cripple their forward operations and gain the upper hand." Colonel Rivers nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the data. "We have a few squads ready, but the Cathrak are not just going to let us walk in there. We need a distraction, a big one." Elena's mind raced. A distraction required finesse and firepower. What about the old mining explosives stored from the ice drilling operations? We could set off a series of controlled blasts, make it look like an accident. While they investigate, we strike hard and fast at the supply points." "Brilliant," Rivers replied, his voice laced with a newfound vigor. "Let's get the demolition teams ready." As preparations surged forward, Sergeant Major Liu rallied the troops. The fighters, clad in their armored suits, checked their gear, loaded weapons, and prepared for the harsh conditions outside. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a palpable sense of unity and purpose. Elena took a moment to communicate with her ship's crew, still on board the Endeavor. "Keep the engines hot and sensors on high alert. We don't know how the Cathrak will respond once we hit them." "Acknowledged, Captain. We'll be ready for anything," replied Lieutenant Hara, her voice resolute over the comm. The operation commenced under the cover of darkness, Titan's minimal sunlight barely filtering through the dense cloud cover. The demolition teams, guided by Elena's strategic placements, set the explosives with precision. Each blast was a carefully calculated echo, resonating through the ice caverns, drawing Cathrak attention away from their crucial supply lines. Meanwhile, Elena led the assault team, moving swiftly and silently across the frozen landscape. The cold bit at their faces, and each breath was a reminder of the planet's hostility. But beyond the physical discomfort, there was a deeper chill, the knowledge of what was at stake. The Cathrak were caught off guard, their forces scrambled to make sense of the explosions. It was during this chaos that Elena and her team struck. Plasma rifles fired bursts of searing light, cutting through the alien armor with precision. The Cathrak, formidable but disoriented, were unable to mount an effective defense. Within hours, the supply depots were overrun, their contents seized or destroyed. The resistance fighters worked with efficiency, their actions synchronized like a well-oiled machine. Elena oversaw the operation from the front lines, her presence a bolstering force to her team. As the sun crested the horizon, casting a pale light over the icy terrain, the echoes of battle faded. The mission was a success, but the war was far from over. Back at the base, as they assessed the damage and planned their next moves, there was a brief moment of respite. Elena stood with Colonel Rivers, overlooking the command center. "Today we struck a blow," she said, her voice carrying a mix of fatigue and satisfaction. "But tomorrow the real challenge begins. We've shown them we can hit back. Now we prepare for their response." Rivers nodded, his eyes reflecting a war-hardened resolve. "And we'll be ready. With you leading the charge, Elena, I believe we can turn the tide." Together, they turned back to the holograms and the maps, the tools of their continued resistance. The war for the galaxy raged on, and at its heart stood a leader resurrected from ice, wielding not just weapons, but the indomitable spirit of humanity. The aftermath of their victory was less celebration and more strategic recalibration. The resistance had dealt the Cathrak a significant blow, but Elena knew it was only a matter of time before the enemy regrouped. The quiet on Titan was the deep breath before the plunge, the silent tension that fills the void before a storm. In the command center, reports came in from scouts and sensor arrays. Cathrak reinforcements were converging on their positions, their movements swift and deliberate. "They're bringing in the heavy battalions," Lieutenant Hara reported, her voice tense as she displayed the incoming fleet on the holographic screen. "And it looks like they're led by a war commander. We haven't seen this level of mobilization since the siege of Mars." Elena studied the incoming data, her mind weaving through tactics and countermeasures. If a war commander is involved, they're not just looking to reclaim lost ground, they want a decisive victory. She turned to Colonel Rivers, her resolve clear in her gaze. "We need to use Titan's terrain to our advantage, engage them in the ice canyons. The narrow passes will limit their numbers and neutralize some of their heavier artillery." Rivers nodded, his trust in Elena's judgment unwavering. "I'll mobilize the squads. We'll need every able fighter ready for a guerrilla campaign. Hit-and-run tactics will be our best bet against a force this size." As the resistance prepared for the impending confrontation, Elena took a moment to address her crew and the fighters. Her words were a catalyst, turning fear into focus. "This is our home now, and we will defend it with everything we have. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for the future of humanity." The battle began at the break of dawn. The Cathrak forces, massive and menacing, descended upon the ice fields of Titan. Their advance was met with ferocity by human fighters, who emerged like phantoms from the ice fog, their weapons blazing trails of light across the icy landscape. Elena led from the front, coordinating the squads through her tactical link. Each order she issued was precise, each maneuver critically timed. The ice canyons echoed with the sounds of combat, plasma fire lighting up the crevasses as both sides maneuvered for supremacy. Amid the chaos, a formidable figure emerged on the battlefield, a Cathrak war commander, its armor darker than the void of space, its weapons devastating. The sight of the war commander rallied the Cathrak troops, their attacks becoming more coordinated and fierce. Elena recognized the shift in the tide and made a split-second decision. "Cover me!" she commanded over the comm, her eyes locked on the towering adversary. With a select team of her best soldiers, she maneuvered through the battlefield's frigid smoke and debris, closing in on the war commander. The confrontation was titanic, the stakes clear. Elena and her team engaged the war commander, their plasma rifles barely making a dent in its heavy armor. It was a dance of death, each move countered by brutal force. Finally, seizing a moment of vulnerability, Elena found her mark, landing a critical blow that staggered the massive Cathrak. The fall of the war commander was the signal the resistance needed. Bolstered by the success of their leader, the human fighters surged forward, their spirits ignited. The Cathrak, now leaderless and demoralized, began to falter. As the last of the enemy retreated, leaving behind the scarred and icy battlefield, Elena stood amidst her weary but victorious team. They had survived, but the victory was somber. The cost was visible in the faces of those who would never return home. Back at the command center, the screens showed the retreating Cathrak forces, but no one was deceived by the temporary lull. Elena and Colonel Rivers reviewed their resources, ammunition, personnel, morale. "This was a victory," Rivers said, "but there will be more battles. We need to be ready." Elena nodded, her gaze firm and her voice steady. "We will be. We'll rebuild, resupply, and retrain. Every skirmish teaches us more about our enemy, and every victory brings us closer to the end we fight for." As Titan rotated slowly, casting long shadows across its icy surface, the resistance regrouped, knowing the galaxy was watching. In the heart of that frozen outpost, a beacon of hope burned bright. Hope for a day when humanity would once again stand free among the stars. As Titan's icy expanse slowly healed from the ravages of battle, the struggle for survival evolved into a calculated chess game of interstellar warfare. The Cathrak, reeling from the loss of their war commander, had momentarily pulled back to the darker reaches of Saturn's shadowy moons, regrouping under the stern command of the High Council. Elena knew this brief respite was a deceptive calm, a time borrowed against the inevitability of a harsher storm. In the dimly lit corridors of the resistance base, the atmosphere was electric with activity. Engineers and tech specialists scurried about, enhancing defenses and refining weaponry with salvaged Cathrak technology. Dr. Emily Chen, a brilliant physicist among the survivors, had made a significant breakthrough with the alien tech. "We can adapt their energy shielding to our fighters, giving us a much-needed edge in the skirmishes," she explained to Elena, displaying the modified schematics on her tablet. Elena nodded appreciatively, her mind already racing through tactical applications. "Implement it with the recon squads first. They're our eyes and ears out there. I want them as protected as possible." As the new tech was deployed, training sessions intensified. Elena watched from the observation deck as new recruits sparred with veterans, their movements a ballet of disciplined aggression. Colonel Rivers joined her, his presence a steady comfort. "The new recruits are learning fast. They understand what's at stake," he remarked, his voice tinged with both pride and sorrow. "Their spirit is what keeps us all going," Elena responded, her eyes never leaving the training below. "They're the future, Jack, and we're going to make sure it's a future worth fighting for." On the strategic front, Elena and her command team worked tirelessly, planning the next phase of their campaign. The recent victory had provided them with critical data about the Cathrak's tactics and weaknesses. They relied too heavily on their command structure. Take out the leaders and the rank and file falter, noted Lieutenant Vega, a tactician whose analytical skills had proven invaluable. We use that, Elena decided. We target their command centers, disrupt their hierarchy, keep them off balance. With the plan set, Elena led a covert operation deep into the nebula fields of Saturn. The nebulae, with their complex clouds of gas and dust, provided perfect cover for the Endeavor and its fleet of newly shielded fighters. The resistance ships, like specters, glided silently through the cosmic fog, their outlines blurred by the swirling colors of the nebula. The target was a heavily fortified Cathrak outpost nestled within the moon Enceladus's icy crust. The outpost, a hub of communications and logistics, was the linchpin in the Cathrak's regional command. Destroying it would sever the flow of orders and create chaos among their forces spread across Saturn's moons. The assault was swift and silent. The resistance fighters, cloaked by the nebula's embrace, struck with precision. Explosions ripped through the outpost, sending shockwaves through the Cathrak networks. Elena led from the front, her suit's new shielding flickering as it absorbed the blasts from enemy defenses. As the outpost crumbled, the Cathrak scrambled to mount a defense, but the disarray was too great. Elena and her team infiltrated the command center, securing vital intelligence before eradicating the facility. With the mission accomplished, the resistance fleet withdrew back into the nebula's protective veil. The return to Titan was quiet, the enormity of their success not yet fully realized. But as the Endeavor emerged from the nebula, the scale of their victory became apparent. Reports flooded in from other resistance cells across the moons. Without the outpost's commands, the Cathrak forces were in disarray, their responses delayed and uncoordinated. In the war room, Elena and her team gathered around the holotable, maps and fresh data scrolling across the screens. The success of the mission had opened new possibilities, new strategies to explore. We've shown them that we can strike deep into their territory and return unscathed, Elena declared to her team. Her words were not just of reassurance, but a vow. We'll keep hitting them, keep exploiting their weaknesses. We'll fight for every inch of space until we've taken back our home. As Titan's long shadow cast a dark veil over the base, the light of determination in the eyes of Elena and her fighters shone brilliantly. They were the guardians of humanity's future, standing defiant under the stars, ready to reclaim the galaxy that once sang with the echoes of human endeavors. With the galaxy's balance teetering on the edge of a knife, the Resistance's strategic assaults continued to chip away at the Cathrak Empire. The destruction of their command outpost on Enceladus had sent ripples through their ranks, fostering uncertainty and chaos. Elena, seizing on the disarray, orchestrated a series of guerrilla attacks across the moons of Saturn, each strike calculated to draw the enemy further out of their strongholds and into vulnerable positions. In the war room, the atmosphere was charged with a focused intensity as reports of their successes streamed in. We've confirmed the fall of 3 additional outposts, Lieutenant Vega announced, her voice echoing in the dimly lit room. The Cathrak forces are retreating to consolidate. It appears their morale is cracking. Elena, standing over the holotable, surveyed the galactic map with a steely gaze. This is our moment, she stated firmly. We will not let them regroup. Prepare all squads for a full-scale offensive. We're going to push them out of Saturn's system once and for all. The Endeavor and its accompanying fleet readied themselves for what would be their most ambitious operation yet. Ships were loaded with all the munitions and supplies they could carry, while pilots and soldiers ran through last-minute drills and checks. The air was thick with anticipation and resolve, a combustible mix that fueled the hearts of those preparing to fight. As the fleet departed from Titan, Elena stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, her presence a commanding beacon for her crew. All ships, this is Captain Marquez. Today we reclaim our future. Stay sharp, stay focused, and watch each other's backs out there. For humanity. The battle that unfolded near the rings of Saturn was monumental. The Cathrak, though initially caught off guard, quickly mobilized their remaining warships, engaging the Resistance in a fierce confrontation among the icy particles and colossal ring structures. The space around Saturn became a chaotic canvas of blinding weapon discharges and devastating explosions. Elena maneuvered the Endeavor through the maelstrom of battle, her tactics as daring as they were brilliant. She directed her forces with precision, breaking through the Cathrak lines to allow smaller fighter squadrons to flank and penetrate deeper into enemy territory. Meanwhile, on the surface of Titan, Colonel Rivers coordinated with ground forces to secure key locations, ensuring that no Cathrak reinforcements could launch from the moon's bases. His voice was a constant presence in the ears of his troops, guiding and motivating them through the fog of war. The turning point came when Elena led a risky maneuver to breach the command ship of the Cathrak fleet. With a small team, she boarded the vessel, fighting her way to the bridge where the enemy leaders orchestrated their defense. The confrontation was fierce, with Elena and her team pitted against the elite Cathrak guards. After a grueling battle, she planted charges around the ship's core, escaping moments before the detonation sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The explosion of the Cathrak command ship was the death knell of their control in the region. What remained of their fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, was quickly subdued by the emboldened resistance fighters. As the last of the Cathrak ships either surrendered or fled, a profound silence settled over the battlefield. The rings of Saturn, witness to the conflict, shimmered distantly as debris from the clash drifted into the void. In the aftermath, Elena returned to Titan, where she was met with the cheers and tearful embraces of her crew and the resistance fighters. The victory was celebrated not as the end of the war, but as a decisive step towards the eventual liberation of their galaxy. "We have shown the Cathrak that we are not broken, not beaten," Elena addressed the gathered resistance members, her voice resolute and clear. "Today marks not just a victory, but a promise. We will continue to fight, to push back the darkness until all our worlds see the dawn of freedom." Under the pale light of Saturn, amidst the frozen landscapes of Titan, humanity's fighters stood together, their spirits unbroken, their resolve unyielding. The battle had been won, but the war for their galaxy's future raged on. Elena, her eyes set on the stars, knew this was but the dawn of their struggle. The echoes of their triumph would resonate through space, a signal to all that humanity would never cease, would never falter, until the light of liberty and justice filled every corner of the galaxy.